Hello and welcome back to another lecture. To complete our project, we will start by creating a custom VPC. And in this lecture, we will build a 3-tier VPC using the following reference architecture. In a 3-tier VPC reference architecture, your infrastructure is divided into 3 tiers. On the first tier, we have the public subnets. And the public subnet will hold resources such as NAT gateway, load balancer, and bastion host. On the second tier, we have our private subnets, and this is the subnet that is going to hold our web servers. So when I say web servers, I'm referring to the EC2 instances. On the third tier, we have another private subnet, and these subnets will hold our database. We will duplicate the subnets across multiple availability zones for high availability and fault tolerance. And finally, we are going to create an internet gateway and route table to allow the resources in our VPC to have access to the internet. To create our VPC, let's go to the management console. In the management console, the first thing we are going to do is select the region where we want to create the VPC. And according to the reference architecture, we will create this VPC in the Northern Virginia region. To change your region, select the drop-down up here and make sure you select US East, Northern Virginia. Once you have selected the region where you want to create your VPC, the next thing we are going to do is create our VPC. So in this search box, I want you to type VPC. And under services, select VPC. In your VPC dashboard, select VPCs here. Then click Create VPC. We will give our VPC a name and I'll call it Dev VPC. Once you've given your VPC a name, we are going to leave it on IPv4 CIDR block. Then under the IPv4 CIDR block, we are going to enter our CIDR block. According to our reference architecture, the CIDR block for this VPC is going to be 10.0.0.0/16. So I'm going to enter it here. Once you've entered your CIDR block, we are going to leave the next 2 settings as default. We will leave the no IPv6 CIDR block and the tenancy is going to be default. We are going to scroll down and click Create VPC. And there you go. We have successfully created our VPC. Once you've created your VPC, you can see all the VPCs in your account by selecting this Filter by VPC box. And if you don't see the VPC you just created, all you have to do is refresh your page up here. So I'll click Refresh. And when I select the Filter by VPC box again, you'll see the VPC in there. And this is how you see all the VPCs in your account. So if you want to filter your VPC by a particular VPC, just select this box and I'll select the VPC I just created. Once you filter it by a particular VPC, it is only going to show you the information on that VPC. The next thing we are going to do is enable DNS hostname in our VPC. To enable DNS hostname in the VPC, first I'll filter it by the VPC, and the next thing you are going to do is select Actions and select Edit DNS hostnames. And on this page, make sure this is checked and click Save Changes. This is how you enable DNS hostname in the VPC. The next thing we are going to do is create an internet gateway for our VPC. So on the left side, we are going to select Internet Gateways. Then click Create Internet Gateway. Then give your Internet Gateway a name. Once you have given your Internet Gateway a name, click Create Internet Gateway. And there you go, we have successfully created the Internet Gateway. The next thing you need to do is attach the internet gateway to the VPC you created previously to allow the VPC to communicate with the internet. You can see that information here. To attach an internet gateway to a VPC, click this Attach to a VPC button here. Under Available VPCs, select this search box, and it is only going to show you the VPC in your account that does not have an internet gateway attached to it. You can only attach one internet gateway to one VPC. We just created this Dev VPC and we haven't attached an internet gateway to it. That is why that is the only VPC that is showing here. I'm going to select it and click Attach Internet Gateway. And there you go. We have attached our Internet Gateway to the dev VPC we created previously. If you look, you can see for the Internet Gateway, the state is attached and the VPC we attach it to is the dev VPC. Once you have attached the Internet Gateway to the VPC, next we are going to create our public subnets in the first and second availability zones. To create our public subnets, on the left side, select Subnets. I am still filtering my VPCs by the dev VPC. That is why you are not seeing any subnets in here, because we haven't created any subnet in that VPC. So if you are seeing subnets on your screen, make sure you filter it by the VPC you just created. And once you filter it by your VPC should not have any subnet yet. We are going to create our first public subnet in this VPC. I'm going to click Create Subnet here. Then first we are going to select the VPC where we want to create the subnet. So I'll select this drop down and make sure you select your dev VPC. Then scroll down. We are going to give the subnet a name. According to our reference architecture, we'll call it Public Subnet AZ1. Once you have given the subnet a name, according to our reference architecture, we are going to put this subnet in the US East 1A availability zone. So under availability zone, select the drop down and select US East 1A. Then under IPv4 CIDR block, you are going to enter the CIDR block for the subnet. The CIDR block for this subnet is going to be 10.0.0.0/24. So once you type 10.0.0.0/24, select it here. And once you have entered the CIDR block, scroll down and click Create Subnet. We have successfully created our first public subnet in the US East 1A availability zone. Remember, we need two public subnets, one in US East 1A and the other in US East 1B. So let's create the second public subnet. To create the second public subnet, click Create Subnet up here. Then we are going to follow the same steps we used previously to create our first public subnet. First, we are going to select this drop down and select the dev VPC because we want to create this subnet in this VPC. Next, we are going to scroll down. We are going to give our subnet a name and we are going to call the second subnet Public Subnet AZ2. Once you have given your subnet a name, under availability zone, we are going to put this subnet in the US East 1B availability zone according to our reference architecture. So I'll select this drop down and this time I'll select US East 1B. Then under IPv4 CIDR block, we are going to enter the CIDR block for this subnet. The CIDR block for this subnet according to our reference architecture is 10.0.1.0/24. Once you've entered your CIDR block, select it here. Then scroll down and click Create Subnet. We have created our second public subnet in the US East 1B availability zone. To see both of your subnets, click Clear Filters. And it is going to show you all the subnet in this region for all the VPCs. Once again, you have to filter it by your VPC. So under Filter by VPC, I'll filter it by my dev VPC. Now you can see just the two subnets in that VPC. We have the public subnet AZ1, public subnet AZ2. Make sure when you look at their availability zone, public subnet AZ1 should be in US East 1A availability zone. Public subnet AZ2 should be in the US East 1B availability zone. Now that we have created the public subnets, the next thing we are going to do is enable the auto-assign IP settings for the two public subnets. When you enable the auto-assign IP settings on the public subnets, this means that anytime you launch EC2 instance in this public subnet, those EC2 instances will be assigned a public IPv4 address. So to enable the auto-assign IP settings for the public subnets, select the first one then select Action up here and click Edit Subnet Settings. Under Edit Subnet Settings, for Auto Assign IP Settings, enable it by checking this box. So once you enable it, scroll all the way down and click Save. We are going to do the same thing for the subnet in the second availability zone. We are going to uncheck this and select the second subnet. We are going to click Action and select Edit Subnet Settings. And under Auto Assign IP Settings, we are going to enable it by checking this box. Then scroll down and click Save. The next thing we are going to do is create a route table. And according to our reference architecture, we will call this route table Public Route Table. To create a route table, on the left side, select Route Tables. It is still filtering my VPC by the dev VPC. And in my dev VPC, I have one route table in there. This route table was created when we created the VPC. So in your VPC, you should have one route table. That route table will be created when you first create the VPC. Another thing you should know about this route table is that it is called the main route table and it is private by default. We are going to cover what that means later on. To create the public route table, click Create Route Table up here. We will give our route table a name. We will call it Public Route Table. Once you've entered the name for the route table, we are going to select the VPC that we want to create it in. So under VPC, select this drop down and make sure you select your dev VPC. And once you've selected your dev VPC, click Create Route Table. We have successfully created our route table and we called it Public Route Table. Once you have created the route table, the next thing we are going to do is add a public route to the route table. The public route will allow the route table to route traffic to the internet. To add a route to the public route table, first make sure you are on the Routes tab, then click Edit Routes and click Add Route. To add a route that routes traffic to the internet to this route table, under Destination, we are going to type 0.0.0.0/0 in this search box. So click in here, type 0.0.0.0/0, then select it here. Then under Targets, we are going to click this search box again, and here we want to select our internet gateway. Once you select your internet gateway, the internet gateway you have in your VPC will show here. You can see it is the dev internet gateway and we are going to select it. This is how you add a public route to the route table. Make sure your destination is 0.0.0.0/0 and the target is your internet gateway. Once you've done that, click Save Changes. We have added routes to the internet to our public route table. And if I scroll down, under the Routes tab, you can see that route here. The next thing we are going to do is associate the two public subnets we created previously with this route table. To associate the subnets we created previously with this route table, make sure you are still in the public route table, then select Subnet Associations, then click Edit Subnet Associations. On this page, you are going to see the two subnets we created previously, and these are the only two subnets in our VPC currently. Select both subnet, Public Subnet AZ1 and Public Subnet AZ2. Once you have selected both subnets, click Save Associations. We have associated the two subnets we created previously to the public route table. When you select the public route table, under Explicit Subnet Associations, you can see here it says two subnets. And when you come to the Subnet Associations tab, you can see those two subnets there. Public Subnet AZ1 and Public Subnet AZ2 are associated with the public route table. To finish creating our VPC, the last thing we will do is create our 4 private subnets. To create our subnets, on the left side, select Subnets. It is still filtering by my VPC, and currently I only have 2 subnets in it. To create the 4 private subnets, click Create Subnet up here. First, we are going to select the VPC we want to create the subnet in. I'll select this drop down and select my dev VPC. Then I'll scroll down, give your subnet a name. According to our reference architecture, the first private subnet, we'll call it Private App Subnet AZ1. Once you've given your subnet a name, under availability zone, we are going to select US East 1A because that is our first availability zone. Under the IPv4 CIDR block, according to our reference architecture, our CIDR block is going to be 10.0.2.0/24. So once you enter the CIDR block, select it, scroll down, and click Create Subnet. And there you go, we have created our first private subnet in the US East 1A availability zone. We need 4 private subnets, so let's create the second one. I'll click Create Subnet, then select the VPC you want to create the subnet in. I'll select the dev VPC, scroll down, give the subnet a name. According to our reference architecture, the subnet is going to be called Private App Subnet AZ2. Once you've given your subnet a name, under availability zone, select the drop down and we are going to select US East 1B as our second availability zone. Then under IPv4 CIDR block, according to our reference architecture, the CIDR block is going to be 10.0.3.0/24. Once you've entered the CIDR block, scroll down and click Create Subnet. We need 2 more private subnets. Click Create Subnet again. Select the VPC you want to create it in. It is going to be our dev VPC. Scroll down, then give the subnet a name. According to our reference architecture, we'll call the subnet Private Data Subnet AZ1. Once you've given your subnet a name, under availability zone, select the drop down. It is going to be in the US East 1A, and the CIDR block is going to be 10.0.4.0/24. And once you've entered the CIDR block, scroll down and click Create Subnet. We are going to create our last subnet. Click Create Subnet again. On this page, we are going to select the VPC we want to create the subnet in. Select this drop down and select the dev VPC. Scroll down. Under subnet name, according to our reference architecture, we'll call it Private Data Subnet AZ2. Once you've given your subnet a name, under availability zone, select the drop down and we are going to select US East 1B. And under IPv4 CIDR block, the CIDR block for this subnet is going to be 10.0.5.0/24. Once you have entered the CIDR block, scroll down and click Create Subnet. And there you go, we have created all 4 private subnets. To see the subnets, click Clear Filters and filter again by your dev VPC. I'll click in here and select my dev VPC. So now you should only see the subnets in your dev VPC. You can see we have 6 subnets. I'm going to expand this. And another thing I like to do is sort this. So I'm going to click that. You can see all the subnets we've created. Public Subnet AZ1, Public Subnet AZ2, Public App Subnet AZ1, Public App Subnet AZ2, Public Data Subnet AZ1, Public Data Subnet AZ2. Another thing you need to make sure is when you create your subnet, check their availability zones and compare it to the reference architecture. Make sure you have put each subnet in the right availability zone. Before we end this lecture, one important thing I want you to know is the difference between a public subnet and a private subnet. When you create a route table and add a route to that route table to route traffic to the internet, any subnet you associate with that route table becomes public. So basically, a public subnet is associated with a route table that is able to route traffic to the internet. On the other hand, when you have a route table that does not have a route to the internet, any subnet you associate with that route table is private. To show you why these two subnets are public and these subnets are private, let's look at the VPC we just created. To verify this, click on Route Tables. Once you click on Route Tables, make sure it is filtered by your VPC. And in my dev VPC, I have two route tables in there. Let's look at the first route table that we call Public Route Table. I'll select it. Select the Routes tab. And under the Routes tab, this route table is routing traffic to the internet. So any subnet we associate with this route table becomes public. And if you select the Subnet Associations tab, we associated Public Subnet AZ1, Public Subnet AZ2 to this route table. That is what makes those two subnets public. On the other hand, I want you to select the main route table. So I will uncheck this and select the main route table. The main route table was created when we create the VPC. So if you look at this route table, here under main, it says yes. Another thing you should know about the main route table is that it is private by default. So if you click on the Routes tab, the main route table is only routing traffic locally in the VPC, and it does not have a route to the internet. The next question you may ask is, we created 4 private subnets, but we did not associate it with any route table. So why are they private? And that would be a good question. We created 4 private subnets. We did not associate them with any route table. By default, they will be associated with the main route table, which is private. To show you that information, if you select the main route table and under subnet associations, I want you to scroll down. You will see that information here. The following subnet have not been explicitly associated with any route table and are therefore associated with the main route table. In the next lecture, we are going to create our NAT gateway and also create private route tables. Then we will explicitly associate our private subnet with that private route table. But for now, we will let the private subnet be associated with the main route table, which is private by default. If you have any questions or there's any part of this lecture you don't understand, please leave a comment below. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Bye.